So here is the overly complicated tutorial on no, it's the overly complicated walkthrough on making the overly complicated chest. Here's the chest that I just imported the OBJ from my modeler, of course. And I model it with an inside. It's got a hinge, it's got a little key knob thing, it's got the flap. You can't see it because I'll hide it. It's got the flap. There. It's got the flap. There we go. So there's the little key that turns and you can open the flap. It's got hinges in the back. There's a lid. There's an inside. Trust me, there's an inside. Hopefully we'll see it here in a minute. But I want to rig it so that it all works and everything works. And it all works and everything works. I'm going to go to the geometry editor tool. It used to be the polygon editor tool. Now it's the geometry editor tool because it does more than just polygons. But I'm going to open that up just to look at my face groups and my surfaces. You can see here I've got the face groups. There's the bottom of the box. And of course that was all grouped up in my modeler, and Studio read that in helpfully. There's the key part right there. There's the lid, and there's the lock of the box. So in the modeler I grouped all the moving parts together, and I've got these surfaces here. And I gave it some thought, and I decided the key doesn't really stand out because it's the same surface as everything else. So I'm going to select that key. I'm going to zoom in on it so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to change the material. Now I do have in the middle of the key, you can't really see it there, I do have a different material here in the middle of the key. It's black. I put that there just so I could make it darker on the inside so that it would look darker on the inside. But I'm going to click the plus to select all the key polygons. I'm going to click the minus next to black to unselect those black polygons. And then I'm going to take the ones to the left. I'm going to right click here and create a surface from the selected. I'm going to call this metal 2. So now there's a new material for those key polygons, and I can change the, let me change the smoothing first because I sloppy modeled it. There was an actual number I decided to work with. 36. That's close enough. And I'll give it a different color diffuse so it kind of stands out. Alright. I'm going to clear my selection because it's distracting. Alright. So I changed the surfaces on the fly after I loaded it into Studio because I didn't like the way it was. Now I'm going to go ahead and start rigging it. And to do that, it's just a prop right now. Just load it in the OBJ. We're going to go right click on the scene tab. If you right click on the scene tabs, you don't have to actually switch the menus. If you right click, it'll pull the menu right up, so you don't actually have to switch the tab to get to the tab menu. But I'm going to right click on the scene tab. I'm going to go to edit. I'm going to go to rigging. I'm going to convert the prop to a figure. I'm going to come back and select the prop and then do it again. Alright, so it's asking if I want to go with triax weight mapping, general weight mapping, or parametric joint parameters. Parametric joint parameters is basically the old poser rigging before they had capsules and weight mapping and all that stuff. General weight mapping is the one I want. That gives me one weight map per bone. Triax weight mapping gives me a weight map per rotation and a scale weight map. So there's really 4 per bone, or 3 for the rotations. And here at skeleton to parent, there's no parent, so that doesn't really matter. Unchecking it doesn't really make a difference, other than if you uncheck it, you get to come back here and change the root bone name. Hip would be silly in this case. I'm going to change it to bottom, which makes much more sense. Click OK, and it's converted into a figure. I'm going to change that name real quick there back to chest. And if we come over here to the polygon tool, you can see it hasn't changed anything else. All I did is convert it over to a figure, gave me that one bone, which isn't nearly enough. So what I'm going to do, I've got the bottom right now. I'm going to go to the chest. I'm going to go to the joint editor tool, the rigging tool, or the boning tool, depending on how late it is. And I've got the root node, the chest selected right now, and you can see that right there, it's the Z position. The front to back is at 0.12 instead of at 0, and that's because the hinges and stuff like that, the box is centered. The hinges stick out a little bit, and Studio figures that from the bounding box around the entire geometry. I'm going to put them back to 0 just because that makes more sense, and it's a nitpicky thing, but still I'm going to do it. I'm We do the same thing for the bottom. And you can see it generated the bottom bone, looks at the bounding box, kind of guesses where the bone should be, and puts it there. I got it all pretty right. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop the end point of the bone down to 50 because I happen to know if I switch over here to the wire texture shaded and then view it from one of the sides, you can see right there that 50 is right at the seam between the lid and the bottom of the box. I'm also going to come over here, got the bottom bone selected. Over here the selection group is saying box lock right now, which is not the right ones. I want all the bottom polygons, the face group bottom, I want that assigned to the bottom bone. I'm going to come back over here, I'm going to create a new bone. Parent, child of the bottom is the lid, because the lid's attached to the bottom. Hit tab there and it goes down, fills it in for you. Rotation order for this one here is going to be ZXY. You can either guess and then change it over here until you find the bone facing the right way, or you can just remember twist, bend, side, side. I don't know how you remember that. You just remember twist, bend, side, side is the order that they go in. And so now I can go ahead, I'm still in the left view. Working in geometry view, I can see the mesh itself, and because I left the center point there for that hinge, I know exactly where to put it. Whoops, I know exactly where to put it. Plus I modeled it to even numbers, so I happen to know that it's at 25.75, negative 25.75. I also know that the front should be at an even 25. The front, the end point, which is at the front of the chest. There we go. Now there's more attached to the lid. The key attaches to the lid, so I'm going to go ahead and create another bone for key. And you could do all this with the figure setup and have it all do it at once. You still have to go back and adjust the bones, and there's only a handful of them here, so it's your choice. But for me, it's just easier to do it this way in this situation. And so it puts my endpoint up there. This one I happen to not have memorized, so I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. And that was fine at 25. Kind of eyeball it. And because I did model it all to nice even numbers, it's saying 55.01. I know the right answer is 55. I'm going to put the endpoint on the same y-axis and bring it back to 35. And then from there I can slide it the rest of the way until it's right at the top of the key. Again, I used nice even numbers, so 26.5 is where that's going to be. Alright, so that's it. That's attached to the lid of the box. Attached to the bottom of the box, I have this little flap, the lock part. So I'm going to go ahead and select the bottom. Got the bottom selected, create a new bone. It's going to be a child bone. And we're going to call this the lock. And it's going to be in the YXZ. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go back to the lid and change the selection group because I forgot. So I'm going to assign all the lid polygons to the lid bone. I'm going to select the key, assign all the key polygons to the key bone, and then while I'm doing it, I'm going to assign all the lock polygons to the lock bone. Now I'm going to put the lock bone where it's supposed to be. I'm going to pull it forward to everybody's favorite 25, which isn't quite right. It should be 25.75, and that'll line it right up in the z-axis with the hinge. I'll slide it down to the hinge. Again, modeling in even numbers is awesome. Not that one, this one. And I'll take a guess here, 50 is too short. I'll go ahead and make it a little bit taller. The endpoints aren't necessarily all that important. It's still nice to have them nice and clean and tight. The endpoints can be a little bit off. So I've got all my bones in position, and you see here that the numbers I've changed are white because they're not at the defaults. I want the right answers to be the defaults though, so I'm going to go ahead and right click, memorize, and I can either memorize just this bone or I can memorize the whole figure's rigging. I'm going to memorize the whole figure, and all those numbers gray out because they're now the default numbers. So if I go to posing now and I turn the dial, nothing happens because I don't have any weight maps assigned yet. And we can see that if we go to the weight map tool, or the weight brush, or the brush weight, what is it, node weight brush tool. Go to the weight map tool, over to tools, select the weight map, and you can see there's no weight map currently assigned to the lock. There's no weight map currently given to the key. No weight mapping for the lid because it's all 100% to the bottom. Because this is going to use solid weight mapping where every bone, every polygon group gets 100% weight map to the relevant bone, and because I have the bones in place, it's super easy to do this. You just come down to viewport, you right click, you go weight editing, and then fill bone by selection groups, and it fills the bones by the selection groups. So now the lock is 100% weighted to the lock, and I hadn't put it back at 0, so it's moved. And I'm just going to hold Alt and then click anywhere, and it goes back to 0. And the key is 100% to the key. The lid polygons have 100% weight to the lid, and the bottom 100% to the bottom. So if you have solid weight mapping where everything is a solid color, or a solid amount of weights across the bone, or even if you don't but it's close, that's a great way to just kind of get you started, or in this case done. I'm going to go back and clean up my dials here, because not to lock the key. If we go to the key, let me change there. If we go to the key, I just keep saying that, go to the key and rotate. That's as far as I want it to rotate. Users can take it, they can rotate it all over the place. That's just too much rotating. They can also take dials that I don't want them to rotate and rotate them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this dial here, and I'm going to set its limits from 0 to 90, because that's where it should be. I'm also going to change its name to turn key.